What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. It is a hell of a day to talk ball, and I know that the man joining me here today thinks that as well, because Justin Boone, what a big night for your Bills. What a great week one for all of us, but probably the best week one for you, pal, because it was a Bills win and your boys, Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman, skating there into the end zone for you. How you feeling, big guy?
I mean, I may or may not have been texting you a bit during that game as some of those guys were going off fantasy-wise. Yeah, it was a great night. It didn't look like it was going to be very good there for a while. They were kind of getting run all over. It was very concerning, I would say. But yeah, completely turned it around, hung in there till the end. I love Josh Allen, like giving the fans a little bit of a dig too, like the fans that left the stadium early, like letting them know, like keep the faith. Like I love that too. I was watching the game right till the end. And yeah, I couldn't have been happier to see them come through there. And it all goes through with my plan, right? How many times have I said the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl this year? What a great way to start it and a huge confidence boost. And now the schedule gets like pretty easy for a little while. So I hope they don't coast and like overlook some of these teams coming up, because that Ravens matchup, that was a real primetime game and one of the best regular season games I've ever seen. No matter how it turned out, it was a great game.
It was awesome. I mean, just like I said on the recap show yesterday, we're in like quarterback nirvana right now with these alien physical freak shows in the prime of their career. Like what Josh Allen does from a mental perspective, what Lamar Jackson is doing from a mental perspective. It's like the peak of the quarterbacks that we grew up watching. But, oh, by the way, they're not from this planet from like a physical perspective. They're not Tom Brady. They're not Peyton Manning from a physical perspective, but they're operating close to that level. So again, just it's a great time to be alive as a football fan. Although maybe not for the people who submitted to this show today, because it is the week one edition, the post week one edition of the People's Panic Meter. This is just how this show flows out structure wise. First segment, we've got the panic meter submissions, second panic meter, third panic meter. We hit the panic meter hard, but then in the fourth segment, stick around because Justin Boone has his waiver wire pickups of the week. So with that, it is time to fire up the post week one People's Panic Meter.
Would you say it's time for everyone to panic?
Yes, I would, Kent.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening.
No. Wait.
Everybody stay calm. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Reminder, the Panic Meter is presented by Dentech, protecting your teeth from fantasy stress one matchup at a time. So, reminder for the new folks how this works, and you, Justin Boone, because you've never been on a Panic Meter show before. We have 4 tiers to the People's Panic Meter. We have no panic, some panic, total panic, and then the dreaded coping corner. I think the first year are pretty self-explanatory. The coping corner, that just means it's over, okay? We don't panic about you anymore. You drafted this player. We don't take submissions on the player anymore or the team, whatever it is, because it is what it is. You drafted him. You're banged. Nothing's changing. We don't talk about them anymore. And Boone, the panic meters, the panic meter coping corner portion is serious, because once a player's in the coping corner, they don't come out. Like, it is what it is. We actually can bring them out, but it's a very strict, judicious process. So I don't know if you're going to be handing out any coping corners here in week one, but I am excited to get into it.
I know there's at least one full team that I think is right up against the coping corner wall there, and we could talk about it and see if we want to push them over that mark this early. But yeah, there's certainly one team that I am very, very concerned about. We kind of knew this going into the season, so let's get into it.
Perfect transition to the first email. Reminder, fantasy mailbag at yahoosports.com. That is how you submit to the People's Panic Meter. We take social submissions as well, but the best way to get to the front of the line is to play a little audio version. So let's hear Michael S., who sent in this audio clip on the Miami Dolphins.
Tua Tagovailoa, healthy. Devin Achane, healthy. Tyreek Hill, healthy. Jalen Waddle, healthy. Mike McDaniels, healthy. Warm weather. The Dolphins have me worried.
Okay, first of all, I did not listen to the audio before that was sent in. I try to keep it a surprise every time. Michael's got a great voice. I think Michael needs he needs to replace me as the host of this show. I find my voice to be horrible to listen to, which is I can't believe that people listen to this as a podcast and watch this on YouTube. It's crazy because I think my voice is terrible. Michael, great voice. If you want to talk about hosting the show, hit us up. Maybe we can get you on an episode. Probably not, but we will talk about the Miami Dolphins here. Boone, this was supposed to be the week as Michael laid out, right? Like, okay, yeah, maybe the Dolphins fall apart over the course of the season as Tyreek Hill, flies off the handle, as Tua misses games. Health kind of crumbles in. The situation falls apart. But against the Colts in week 1, they fall apart. Like, where do we put them on the people's panic meter after that performance?
I mean, I think this is the one, right? It's like total panic right now, and it is like borderline coping corner for this team. And I don't know how like the shock aspect of it factors in, because again, like you mentioned, this is my first time doing the panic meter with you, but we shouldn't be that surprised. The week 1 thing, we thought this was going to be a good matchup. I think that Colts defense is a little bit better maybe than we were giving them credit. And the one thing I will say about this call that Michael sent in, they weren't completely healthy. Leading into this, Devon Achane was banged up, in the weeks prior. Tyreek Hill was a little banged up in the weeks prior. And then Waddle actually left this game at one point and came back after getting checked out. So there were some injury factors in and around there. But I agree with them that I don't think that was the reason this team looked bad. It was right from the jump. It was turnovers. It was untimely sacks. It just did not look good. And you and I talked about it this summer, like all the ways that as the season goes along, this could just derail for the Dolphins, and it could lead to Mike McDaniel potentially getting fired. It could lead to Tyreek Hill potentially getting traded. But I thought in week 1, it would at least be a little bit better. I ranked them a little higher than I planned to the rest of the way, just because I thought they'd come through in this matchup, and not at all. I mean, Achane still got his, and it looks like he might be okay as long as Tua stays healthy. He'll be able to give you some solid production. But man, it was ugly out there for the Dolphins. And every time you turned around, it was another mistake, another turnover. They barely had the ball in this game. They got crushed in time of possession. And I don't know, where does it go from here? Like, does it get that much better in the weeks ahead? I am very, very worried about this one.
There's so much to talk about here. It is borderline coping corner. I'm not going to put them in just yet because they do have a matchup in week 2 against the Patriots that I'm at least willing to see what that looks like. The Patriots defense was not impressive whatsoever without Christian Gonzalez out there on the back end. Because Christian Gonzalez play in this week 2 game, we shall see. Mike Vrabel was obviously coy about that heading into the week 1. He literally said, I don't know if you saw this clip, Boone, but Mike Vrabel, as reporters heading into week 1, kept asking him like, is Christian Gonzalez going to play? But he goes, guys, use your time more efficiently. Like, I'm not gonna talk anymore about this. Like, literally scolding the reporters for not using their time efficiently. So we'll see what Christian Gonzalez, if he's out there in week 2, that might make a difference for this Dolphins team. Because I will say 2 things that you said there stuck out to me. One, time of possession. I mean, I had this game on one of the boxes here because I just wanted to check out the Colts on Sunday. And I was like, are the Dolphins participating in this game? Like, I never see them on the screen. Every time I'm looking over at that box, they're never on offense. They're just getting smoked on defense by Daniel freaking Jones. So, yeah, the time of possession was insane. Never felt like they were out there. I quote tweeted a really funny play of Devon Achane, like just getting smoked in pass protection. Just like these guys don't even know what they're doing out there. Like, he literally looks like the captain in the Titanic when he looks around in like like with all those windows and then the glass just breaks and all the water barrels him over. That's exactly what Devon Achane looked like in pass protection. The other thing though, I at least want to say, the Colts defense, and you do the strength of schedule stuff coming into the season, and this is where it can be a little tricky, right? Because I think that Colts defense played really well in week 1. Like, Lou Anarumo played the most cover 2 from a percentage standpoint of any defense in week 1. So they really put a lid on that like deep passing stuff that the Dolphins want to do. I think they had like linebackers dropping into coverage well. The front played awesome. Cam Bynum, that addition was just like, oh, it's exactly what you wanted to see. So I just want to give like the Colts defense a little credit in this whole thing before we completely just bury the Dolphins as being atrocious.
I totally agree, and I do think hats off to them. And like I said, I do think they are a little better than we expected here. But is that really the only reason for this? Like, think about this Dolphins offense, like even a couple years ago, and how exciting and scary they were and how great they were for fantasy. And you had multiple running backs producing, and you had these receivers, and it was so concentrated with Waddle and Tyreek, and they were putting up huge stats. And it seems like that scariness is completely gone. Like, teams are not afraid of them anymore. And maybe part of that, like, people were sharing that stat about Tyreek Hill hasn't had a catch over 30 yards since week 1 of last year. And that ties into some of the stuff we talked about in the offseason, right? Is he the same player? Is he on the decline? I really think that he is. And if he's not that like superhero that can beat you downfield, that can make all these plays, then what does this offense become? And man, like Waddle in a game like this, to see Waddle only go out there and it was 4 for 30 for him, I think, like totally not usable for fantasy. And like I said, Achane, like the numbers didn't like pop off the page. It was 75 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. So it like got you there, but it wasn't like a week winning performance by any means by him. So now you're just worried if you're holding the bag on any of these Dolphins players the rest of the way, which I think that's why we are completely panicking. The offensive line doesn't seem like it's going to get that much better. The defense isn't going to save the day. The defense is a huge problem for them. It just all looks so bad. And even as a Bills fan, I will say I feel bad for Dolphins fans.
Yeah. Dolphins fans have been pretty obnoxious during this whole Tua run, so I don't feel that bad for them. But I do feel bad that this team does look like it's on the brink of an implosion. I mean, Mike McDaniel, like I saw Ted Wynn from The Athletic. He said like week 1 big time overreaction, like Mike McDaniel, 2026 Detroit Lions offensive coordinator. And I feel like that might just be the destiny for Mike McDaniel. You know, he's an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I don't know if he's cut out to be a head coach, but hey, maybe they prove us wrong. Again, this week 2 matchup, at least willing to leave the door open. But yeah, for right now, if you've got Dolphins players, the advice is totally panic. Probably shouldn't have drafted any of them. It is what it is. Let's move on to the next submission here. This one comes in from Blake B. Sent in this email on A.J. Brown and Mark Andrews. Got a buy one, get one special for you here, Matt. 2 players supposed to be their quarterback's top targets, yet seemed like the last options. A.J. Brown and Mark Andrews. Is Hurts mad at A.J. Brown again? Did Mark Andrews have an accident we don't know about? Hell, your boy Jahan Dotson showed out. Yeah, damn right he did. And Isaiah Likely was just out. Will either of these guys find their inner excellence, or are they dead in the water for redraft and dynasty? Let's quickly just say on Mark Andrews, I don't have any panic on Mark Andrews. Like, there was a reason he was going way down the draft board this year, and honestly, why I wasn't really drafting into that tier of tight end spoon. Like, I think you have to accept there's going to be some bumps in the road for a guy like Mark Andrews. But do you have any more like deeper concerns about a guy like him?
No, and I think that's the thing. People need to realize that he's not the elite tight end option that he was a few years ago, right? And if you look back to like last year, the first game when they played Buffalo last year in the regular season, he didn't even catch a pass. So, hey, maybe this is like a positive for him, right? He caught 1 pass for 5 yards in this game. Hey. But really, like last year, and I know there was like the injury aspect coming into the season, but last year he didn't catch his first touchdown until week 6, and he ended up catching 11 touchdowns on the season. So he's not as old as people think. He's still going to be involved. There are some concerns, like bring in DeAndre Hopkins. Like Hopkins caught a touchdown last night. Hopkins is going to be involved like that. That could take away a little bit from Andrews. But yeah, I still think that Andrews, he's not the elite guy, but he's still that like mid-range tight end 1. He'll have some good weeks for you. He'll have some bad performances like this too. And you just have to accept that. But you have to accept that with pretty much every tight end other than the elite options, right? And even the elite options right now, we might be getting a little thin. Hopefully Brock Bowers, who I think we'll talk about later, hopefully he's going to be healthy moving forward here. George Kittle's banged up already. Trey McBride still getting it done, getting a lot of volume. But other than those guys, that's just what tight end is. Like, there's really down weeks, and then there's good performances where they come through with a touchdown or 2 and get you there. And I think Andrews is just like firmly in that group now.
Yeah, a lot of volatility at the tight end position. That just kind of is what it is. As we talked about in the offseason with Nate Tice, like that's the way most NFL offenses go. When they've got a receiver like Zay Flowers, they're going to throw the ball to that guy a lot on 40.9% of his routes. They're not going to just necessarily work through the tight end just because. Where's your head on AJ Brown? I have a lot of thoughts on this situation, but I'm curious to hear what you think first.
Yeah, so I'm chalking this one up. I'm not that concerned. I'm not really panicking on this one. I'm chalking it up more to that is, the injury in the summer. It was the hamstring that he was dealing with that kept him out for a while. And we saw a few players who had injuries over the last few weeks or in August kind of come out slow at the beginning of the season here. I don't think he's just like completely fallen off a cliff at 28 years old. I'd be very surprised. And I think you either tweeted or retweeted something last night where it showed like all of the top receivers that had down weeks. And the names on the list were just incredible, right? It was Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, T. Higgins. Like there were so many names on that list that had like 50 yards or less. Very disappointing fantasy performances in week one. And this is the time when like I like to remind everybody that you're going to have bad performances throughout the year. Like receivers are going to have down weeks, even the superstars.
Yeah.
And when it happens in week one, it just seems like the end of the world because that's the only data point we have to go off of. And yet if it happened in week 6 or something after they had put up 5 good performances, you just write it off to like, okay, they had one bad week. What are you going to do? I'm kind of looking at it more like that. Like I don't think it's that concerning. And I think if it happened in week 4 or week 10, it just wouldn't be that big of a deal. But because it's week one and all the book reading stuff and all the, are there actually, rifts between him and Jalen Hurts and everything, I think people like to talk about this one. It's the defending Super Bowl champs after all, right? And people love to kind of create the gossip there. But I wouldn't be surprised at all the further we get removed from this injury if he just gets right back to it. And he is a bit more boomer bust, let's say, than like some of the true elite fantasy receivers. But I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be putting up numbers soon enough.
Yeah, that's why he was kind of at the bottom of that second tier for me, like more of a late second round pick. You like there's games where you're telling me the Eagles dominated a game on the ground, or at least they just kept the ball on the ground a lot. They didn't put it into the air. That happened all the time last year. You can't be totally shocked that this happened. You kind of knew what you're getting into with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. By the way, just on your point about like the early season production, the top 5 scoring wide receivers heading into Monday Night Football: Zay Flowers, Quinton Johnston, Emeka Egbuka, Keon Coleman, Deebo Samuel in half PPR. So again, it's not the guys that were taken early in fantasy football drafts. If you go back to, this is just a good reminder again of like what this is every single year. We forget that this is what happens with wide receivers. Okay. We look back at the total stats. We forget that it's a week to week journey. The top 5 wide receivers in week 1 last year: Jaden Reed, Cooper Kupp, Allen Lazard, Tyreek Hill, Jamison Williams. Think about the way the season, one of them's friggin' Allen Lazard. Think about 3 of the other guys on the list and how like we were furious at those players by the end of the season. Cooper Kupp got cut by his team. Tyreek Hill wanted to talk his way off his team by week 18 and nobody wanted to draft this year. And Jaden Reed was like the most frustrating player in fantasy. So again, it's just like, this is a very volatile position, but the reason that I'll say I have some panic about the AJ Brown stuff is just because of the health that you brought up. I went back and charted this game. Not a good performance in isolation by AJ Brown. If he was out there just like cutting it up, I'd feel a little bit better about that and just like, oh, he didn't get the football thrown his way. It is what it is. But I definitely don't think he looked like himself. And just like, how long does that last, right? It's a hamstring injury. Are we still having this conversation week 2, week 3, week 4? Maybe we're at no panic by week 5. But I do think like I've just got some panic for these early weeks because I don't think he played well in isolation. It felt like they were using him as a decoy to free up guys like Jahan Dotson and the tight ends. So I just don't love that. I'd almost rather him just like not be playing because then you don't have to consider him in your fantasy lineup. But I get it. When he's out there, he's a person that the defense has to account for. So just a little bit of panic for the early season stuff on AJ Brown, though. When he's healthy, I don't have any concern about him.
Yeah, but if you felt like they were using him as a decoy, don't you think that maybe that's them acknowledging, okay, he's not 100%. He's good enough that he can get out there. That's the way to use him this week. And that almost to me makes me feel even better about it because it tells me like they acknowledge that and they were like, okay, we're not going to put the stress on you. Go out, do your thing. We'll use you as a decoy and you're going to get healthier and we'll get you more in the mix as we go here. So I think in general, when we're talking about like really, really big name players, when it's week 1 and they have a down game, normally I'm willing to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt for the most part. But there are some cases as we go along here, we're going to have to point out some guys that we're a little more worried about.
I think this next team that we're going to talk about is one of those that we should be a little bit worried about. Devon W. sends in this email on the Carolina Panthers. They say, the Carolina Panthers, they hurt my feelings. I get it. I want to believe it's early season jitters and a lack of preseason play. But if we are 1 or 2 injuries away from getting blown out by teams like the Jags, I don't know, man. I love the just defeated nature of this email. Sounds very familiar. If you've been watching Panthers football, I don't know, for like the last 10 years. I get it. I'll admit it. Somebody that was excited about the Panthers offense, I'm like close to total panic on what I saw in week 1, but no Ike Ekwonu, the left tackle. That was kind of a last minute thing. You know, Jalen Coker, obviously he's the GOAT and he's not playing. That's a problem. Hunter Renfrow out there getting 11 yards on 6 targets. That's pretty pitiful. So yeah, I'm close to total panic on the Panthers just because they looked so unprepared for this week 1 game.
Yeah, and I think there are some reasons. I agree with you. I think for me, it's at least some panic, maybe the high end of some panic, because didn't this look a lot more like the rookie season and early last season when the offensive line wasn't holding up, and maybe the injury there was the reason, right? Him not being available. Like they were getting all over him, like, and it looked like Bryce Young was in trouble. And that I was having flashbacks to that rookie season when, you know, defenses were chasing him all over the place. He had no time to do anything. And then you add to that, like, the pieces that he's lost here. He didn't have that safety net in Adam Thielen. He doesn't have Jalen Coker out there doing Jalen Coker things. You still really wish that this would have been a better performance after what we saw last season and the ability that he had to rush and just the confidence and how comfortable he looked late last season. But maybe that was because the offensive line was very strong, and this week there was a hole in that armor and the defense was getting through it. So yeah, I don't know. Like, you know, initially I looked at the early season schedule for Carolina and I saw Jacksonville and Arizona and Atlanta and the Patriots and the Dolphins. Those are their first 5 weeks. And I thought, man, we're going to see some very, very big games from this offense. Now I'm not so sure, right? Like, I think Tyrone McMillan is going to be fine. And we saw him produce in this game. Pretty good for a rookie to come out. And despite everything kind of looking the way it did, for him to still produce. Chuba Hubbard was fine in this game, you know, but in terms of anybody else being relevant here, I think that's the real question. And Bryce Young was somebody that I talked about as a potential breakout candidate because we saw last season he was a low-end QB1 after that light kind of switched on for him later in the year. Now, I don't know that he's going to get there unless we see this offensive line really, really change. And maybe it's just, you know, again, maybe we, you know, miscalculated that the Jaguars defense was going to be this really, you know, cupcake matchup, and it wasn't. But yeah, I worry about Bryce Young, and I worry about anyone else coming out of this offense. Like Xavier Legette, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I just don't think it's going to happen. And at some point, Coker's going to come back. And then really, are they going to support like 3 potential guys in the passing game here? Doubt it. Jatavian Sanders, somebody else that had a chance to take a step now, but Tommy Tremble came back and Jatavian Sanders' usage was kind of just like it was last year, right? Not really getting enough to be able to be a fantasy option. So yeah, I certainly have some panic about this offense, and you would have liked to have seen after the way things ended last year, them to get off to a strong start. And kind of that whole game didn't really go the way I projected. Like, I thought we were going to see some fireworks, and it really was a lot sloppier than I thought.
Yeah, maybe we should dial it back to some panic, just because this was a weather delay game. Like, who's to say that maybe if Bryce Young had been out there, like, he would have gotten into more of a rhythm. Again, Ekwonu gets back at left tackle. We get Coker back in there. I think there's a way where they can finish the season a little better. And they got off to a terrible start in last season as well. Did Dave Canales and the Panthers. And like, it just, for all of the like, wow, obviously Miami's terrible vibes transferred over from the preseason to the regular season. The terrible vibes there were bad vibes with the Panthers. Like, they were not good in the preseason and they kind of struggled. They were a mess at times. That transferred over here as well. So definitely, let's just say they're on my radar. I've got some panic about it, but let's see what happens in week 2 against a Cardinals team that they've played before, whereas opposed to like Anthony Campanelli, the Jaguars defensive coordinator, like, he was a total first timer, complete unknown. So maybe they just got fooled a little bit, but not that that's a great excuse for a pitiful performance, but maybe it's just an explanation of what happened there. Let's get to this final one before the break from Barrett R. Sent in this email on Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson's total production was excellent because his receiving work more than made up for his lack of rushing production. But is there any concern regarding his 12 carries for 24 yards, especially when compared to Algiers' 10 carries for 24 yards, which suggests more of a split backfield than we saw at the end of last season? In games in which he doesn't have a 50-yard receiving touchdown, is there any reason to worry here? Boone, any reason to worry about Bijan Robinson coming off of Sunday's performance?
Again, this is my first time on the panic meter. I almost want to create like a new category, like zero panic, reverse panic. Like there is nothing to be worried about here with Bijan Robinson. Like if anything, he showed you that in a very difficult matchup against that Bucs defense, man, like Vita Vea clogging up the middle there. Like that Bucs defense has been so good at stopping the run. That's why we always say they're a pass funnel. Teams can pass on them. You cannot really run on this team. They've been top 5 in terms of fewest rushing yards allowed to running backs over the last 2 seasons. They've done that. And you could have to go back to 2018 here to find a year when the Bucs were one of the 10 toughest defenses for fantasy backs to go against. And yet, when you have a superstar like Robinson, what did he do? He found another way to come through for you. Like, you do not have to worry. That's telling me he's completely matchup proof, right? He can get it done through the passing game. He can get it done. He will find. He'll make a big play here or there. He will always come through for you. So no, I'm not worried about one game where we saw Tyler Algier get a few more carries. No, Bijan Robinson was a great pick, you know, and maybe he's not going to be a 30 touch guy, but there's not that many 30 touch guys out there anymore, right? So he has shown us, he did last year. He was the top scoring running back for the majority of last season after the first month. I think he's going to be that again this year, and everything we saw in week 1 only confirms that to me. So I have no concern here. What about you?
Yeah, maybe just some okay, we got to pay attention to the run blocking, right? Because Kaleb McGarry is not out there at right tackle. He's one of their better run blockers. But bottom line, your fantasy RB1 touches the football 18 times in a game and scores over 20 points. There's no panic about that because you said it perfectly, Boone. I think one thing that gets underrated about Michael Penix, now he did scramble a lot in this game, but he will get to that check down. He'll get to the right read of okay, it's not there downfield, although sometimes he does force it, but he will get to that check down occasionally pretty well. And that's going to be Bijan Robinson more often than not. The guy was on the field a ton, ran a route on 76.6% of the dropbacks. He's going to be out there a ton. No panic on Bijan Robinson as a fantasy RB1. So I think we're in agreement on that one. Just no issues for him going forward. We'll see about the rushing production, but the fact that Tyler Algier is in the mix, he's not going to get every single touch available to the running backs here.
Well, I do think it's worth noting quickly that the injuries they have in the receiving core, right? Like Darnell Mooney, I thought there was a chance he was going to play this week. He didn't. Drake London got banged up in this game. They're calling him day-to-day, I believe. We'll see if he's able to play next week. So who's it going to be? It's going to be Bijan Robinson. It's going to be Kyle Pitts, who, weirdly, I don't really want to go off on a Kyle Pitts tangent, but, he kind of looked good this week. He was producing. That's probably the best we've seen him look in a while. Now, it was an easy matchup for him, but regardless, with that receiving core banged up, this is going to become only more of the Bijan Robinson show. They have to do that. So yeah, not concerned at all.
I'm with you that I think that was probably the best I've seen Kyle Pitts look since his knee injury in his second season. So definitely a good sign for Kyle Pitts, but we'll talk more Falcons, I believe, later. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got Tucker Kraft and Nico Collins. 2 Yahoo Fantasy Forecast favorites that people are panicking on. We'll get to those guys right after this quick break. All right, we are back. We're continuing to run through the post-week 1 People's Panic Meter with the great Justin Boone. And we've got to talk through Tucker Kraft, I guess. Lou sends in this email on Tucker Kraft. Hey, Matt, while Tucker Kraft's 8.9 points scored on 2 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown was a respectable fantasy day for a tight end, I crunched the numbers to see what his line would have looked like if he had not scored on his first reception, and the results chilled me to the bone. He would have had a far less respectable 2.9 points on 2 catches and 19 yards with 0 touchdowns. Are our hopes of a slightly more consolidated target allocation, albeit largely injury-driven, already dashed? Will he remain among the touchdown or bust tight ends, or is there any hope he can level up a bit in his 3rd season? And that's, I'm not trying to laugh at you, buddy, because we love you, Lou. You know, listen to the podcast. We appreciate the hell out of you, buddy, but we never don't go number crunching what it would have looked like if he hadn't scored a touchdown. He did. You got the points. Just take them. Just take them. Never go number crunching. That's for the goofball analysts to do. Not you, Lou. Just take the points and be happy.
I want to give Lou the benefit of the doubt here and say that Lou was purposely trying to be like a little bit funny to get this one through, right? Like with that kind of comical equation. I'm not worried about Kraft. And in part, like, you know, if he fails the season, I mean, maybe part of me just like kind of being worried about this would be we might have to like shut down the podcast. Like we might have to like hand in our fantasy analyst badges. Like we have talked about this guy so much that if he doesn't come through, we might be in trouble, Harmon. But this is one that we saw coming. Like I wrote an article in August about players that have the hardest early season schedules. And who was the tight end that I talked about in that one? It was Tucker Kraft. And you look at what Kraft did, like, or what he was going to have to face here, right? Like the Lions, the Commanders, the Browns, and the Cowboys. Those are the first 4 matchups for him. They were all in the top 7 for fewest fantasy points allowed to tight ends last year. So that is not great, even though we really were targeting this guy in the middle rounds as the tight end we wanted if we didn't get one of those elite tight ends. But specifically the Lions, and I wrote this in that column, he's never topped 45 yards in any of his 4 contests against the Lions. So did we really think that all of a sudden he was going to come out in this game and have this really big performance when, let's face it, like they controlled that game. They really didn't need to do that. So no, I'm not worried about this one at all. I'm happy that he came through with the touchdown. I think in the first month here, we might need either the touchdown or weeks where he does get a little more volume in order to get over some of these tougher matchups. But overall, no, not worried at all. If you can go out and get him, if you can buy him low, I'd be doing that all month long. If he has, down games, try to go get him because I think it's going to get a lot better as the season goes along. And if you have him, I'm holding him, and I'm holding him with no panic whatsoever.
Yeah, in terms of like, will he be touchdown or bust? That is most tight ends, honestly. And, even if Tucker Kraft has the season that we were hoping he had in the offseason, he's still going to be a little bit touchdown or bust because he's not Trey McBride. He's not Brock Bowers. Like, great player, but he's probably not those guys. But still, like, everything coming out of week 1, you got the points, so you got the touchdown, which is good in a game where, like Boone said, they were controlling that one. They didn't have to take to the air very often. That certainly is not going to be the case in week 2 against the Commanders, who looked pretty good on offense to start their season. So I think that's going to be an important one to track. And otherwise, like, playing time, exactly what you want. He led the team in routes, 78.3% route participation, 18.2% target share, tied for second on the team behind the great Jayden Reed. Shout out to Jayden Reed for he doesn't have a foot, but he's playing football. So just a tough as nails player. So yeah, no panic on Tucker Kraft. He is still a guy that, and I say this as somebody that has Tucker Kraft on just a ton of fantasy teams. I'm starting him next week without any real reservations or hesitations. Next one that we've got here, Eric V sent in an email with a few players, okay? But the one I really want to highlight first is Nico Collins. I love it. He just listed off 4 names. Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs. I don't know what you're paying about with Josh Jacobs. Come on, give me a break. George Pickens, Tyrone Tracy. Send help, okay? Just the names and send help with an A. But let's talk about Nico Collins here, Boone. Nico Collins, what's the level of panic after he was, yes, yet another one of those top-level wide receivers that did not have a strong start to his season?
Yeah, none. Like, are you out there panicked that Jamar Chase was held under, 30 yards? Are you worried about that? I'm not. I'm not worried about Collins. And, I don't think we need to really worry about almost anybody on that list of, like, the top receivers. And not to go off on a tangent here, but, like, the list of those guys, like Amonra St. Brown is somebody that maybe we're shaving a little bit off the top of his projection based on what the Lions look like. Brian Thomas Jr. was another one of the top guys. And like, with him now, he's got to deal with Travis Hunter. Like, there's some guys in there that maybe you could like really push, but all of them are going to be fine. These are all great talents. These are guys that are going to be able to come through for you. So I'm not that worried, but also I'm not the receiver guy. So maybe you should be telling me whether you're worried or not.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that we learned from the Houston Texans in week 1 is they don't trust their rookies yet. No Christian Kirk in this game, and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel still ran like sub 15 routes in the game. They were behind. I knew they'd likely be behind Xavier Hutchinson. Been talking about that for a while, that he was going to be this year's Matt Collins, like plays more than people think. But then, what a title, by the way, this year's Matt Collins. Put that one on the, everyone wants to find who's the next Bucky Irving. No. I'm going to tell you who the next Matt Collins is. That's why you subscribe to this podcast. So stupid. But okay, so I knew they were going to be behind Xavier Hudson, but Justin Watson played more than these guys. Did not see that one coming. Okay, that was weird. So they don't trust these rookies yet. That means that Nico Collins, he doesn't have any competition for targets as long as these, at some point the rookies will play more, Higgins and Noel, no question. The only thing that stood out to me too is that they did not play Collins anymore like in the slot. 10.4% slot rate in this game. Justin Watson, for whatever reason, was the slot receiver. I don't know what that's about. I think I kind of want to just throw this game in the trash for the Texans, to be honest with you, because the new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, comes from the Rams. So while we had, hey, this is it's going to be a new offense. Maybe the protection rules are better. Well, nobody's going to know the protection rules better than the place that he just came from, right, in the LA Rams. Also, that front with Jared Verse and the boys is insane. Also, get this route chart off my screen. Like that, this is crazy. This tweet pissed me off. Like this tweet about somebody free Nico Collins from Houston. Nico Collins is like, had 2 great seasons in Houston. Give me a break. Also, these next gen route charts are cool when the player has a big game. They're like 0% instructive when the player doesn't get targeted because they only show the targeted route. So sorry, you've triggered the route guy here on the show. But anyways, I've talked too much, Boone. Please take it from here. I'm just not worried about like a bad performance against a Rams front like Jared Verse and those guys. They're going to kick a lot of ass all season long, the Texans included.
Yeah, it does highlight the one area that might be concerning for the Texans, and that's the fact that the offensive line is just this huge question mark. And in a matchup like this, they did not get it done, and I don't think that we really expected them to excel in this one by any means. But that could be like the Achilles heel for this offense. It kind of was last year. I think it could be again, but still, I'm not that worried about Nico Collins. The fact that they don't have a great rushing attack, that's also a problem. But Nico Collins is one of these talents that he is going to still have these boom games. He is going to come through. Not worried about him at all. When we look at like the other names in this question, though, you touched on, Josh Jacobs, we can go through really quick. That's a fine game from Josh Jacobs, right? He came away with like 70 yards and a touchdown. And it was against a defense who was top 5 against fantasy running backs last year. Like, yeah, you got lucky that you came away with that stat line. Josh Jacobs is going to be fine. George Pickens, another guy, really tough matchup against a strong defense, the defending Super Bowl champs. He comes out, gets frustrated a little bit in that one. There are going to be much, much better days ahead for Pickens. Not worried about him. He's still in that kind of borderline low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 range. I really like him. And then somebody else that I think is interesting here is Tyrone Tracy, right? Like, he didn't have a big game in terms of his production. But when you look at the underlying metrics from a usage standpoint, this is exactly what we projected, right? The beat writers were saying a 70-30 split. And what happened? He played 74% of the snaps this week. He had 15 touches, and it didn't turn into a lot. But I look at the other guys in that backfield, and I don't think Devin Singletary is that much of a threat. And so, okay, people get really fired up about the Cam Scatteraboo highlights, but what's happening in these highlights? He's trucking guys. He's knocking guys over. He's modern day Mike Allstotting people. And yet, look at his stat line. It was like 2 carries for -3 yards or something like that. Like, he looks slow out there. He does not, to me anyway, look like a guy who's coming to take over this backfield. I don't know that Cam Scatteraboo is going to eventually become this like meaningful pro player. I don't really see him as somebody who's going to be like a fantasy star down the road. So I think Tyrone Tracy has this backfield, and there'll be better days. And I think he'll still be in that low end RB2 kind of flex mix for you. He's just not a league winner. And I know people don't get like overly excited about those kind of guys that don't have that top 5 upside potentially. But he's still somebody that where you were getting him in drafts can slot into your lineup as an RB2 or a flex and be fine if you spend your early picks wisely and you filled out the rest of your lineup. I have teams like that I think are going to be just fine with him on it.
Yeah, I always come back to this on this show, Boone, that it's like panic relative to what? It's not like you spent that much draft capital to acquire Tyrone Tracy in your fantasy football leagues. Like he's the Giants starting running back. There's going to be some down weeks, spoiler alert, no matter who's the starting running back for the New York Giants. And then, on George Pickens, like there's going to be some volatility with any of these receivers. Again, as we've talked about constantly so far, there's going to be up and down play with receivers, but especially for a guy that is the pure perimeter player going against the Eagles, where I was a little surprised to see Quinshon Mitchell tracking George Pickens on the outside. That was interesting. Didn't expect that to happen. But that was just, again, they wanted to slow him down on the outside. That I think, again, he plays the Giants this week, does George Pickens. You think he's not going to dust a couple of those Giants cornerbacks? If he doesn't, then we have another conversation next week here on the People's Panic Meter. But that's actually a good transition to our next email, which comes in from Micah. Drafted guy that was going in kind of the same-ish tier, Calvin Ridley, over the likes of Zay Flowers, and I started him. I know he had a very tough matchup against a great Broncos defense, but he committed a couple of bad drops. What's your feeling about Ridley after this weekend? I will say, Boone, I mean, Micah touched on the matchup. We all know that. We also know Calvin Ridley's going to put a couple balls on the ground. Like if you've watched Calvin Ridley over the last 2 seasons, he's going to have some bad drops. Like that's going to be a part of it. Is it a shame that some of those were maybe the best throws that Cam Ward made? Although, God, he's got to take some RPMs off that ball a little bit. Otherwise, these guys are going to continue to drop that thing. But still, you're a wide receiver. Catch the football, please. Come on, that's your job. It's a shame that those were some of Ward's better throws and better opportunities to get Ridley when he was open. But, he's going to drop a few. I'm not too – how worried are you coming off of this dud game for Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, I'm not that worried at all. I think Micah answered their own question here, right? Like it was the matchup. We knew going into this one. I write my start sit column. It goes up on Friday mornings. And who was the receiver that I highlighted as a sit? It had to be Ridley because we knew he was going to go against Pat Surtain. And what ended up happening, right? Like Surtain really shadowed him. Like he shadowed him the vast majority. We don't always see that. Normally a player can get away a little bit and still put up some stats. In this one, he was on him basically all game. And Ridley did not do that much because of it. There are going to be much better days. The volume is still going to be there. There's maybe one rookie who's kind of emerging and we're to talk about a little bit in this offense. But in terms of who's going to be that top target for Cam Ward all year long, it's going to be Ridley and the volume's going to be there. And I'm not even somebody that likes Ridley that much. So it's weird for me to be sitting here kind of defending him after week 1. But I just look at that setting for him and the volume that he's going to get there. And I think he is going to be a fine play as a wide receiver 3 in your fantasy lineups.
Yeah, I did like Ridley in drafts this year, maybe a little bit more than Boone did. But yeah, 32% target share coming out of this game. That's what we expected. But we know there's going to be bumps in the road with a rookie quarterback going on the road in another game that was a freaking weather delay. By the way, another freaking weather delay from this week in that Titans-Broncos game. Best defense in the league, shadow coverage from the reigning defensive player of the year. That's just games like this are going to happen.
I will say, too, before we move on, one way that you could kind of put a positive on this is on the season in my strength of schedule matrix, the Titans receivers had the 5th easiest schedule on the year. And that was counting this week 1 game, knowing it was going to be so difficult. So the rest of the way, it is going to be a very positive schedule. So that's kind of a little more wind at his back, hopefully, the rest of the way.
Let's stick in this next one in that game, actually. Chaz Y sends in a rant just titled Dolphins, and then talks about Tua, Waddle. We already covered that. Also talks about some players they had on their bench that the team, their team's cooked, they say. But the question here is also Bo Nix looked terrible against the Titans. What's up with that? So Boone, I gotta say, if you drafted Bo Nix to be your standalone QB1, which people were doing, I was not one of them, I'd be pretty weirded out by what was honestly just forget fantasy. This was a bad game from Bo Nix at home in the opener against a Titans team that it's maybe I think they could maybe be a solid defense, but it's not like they're going against their own defense in Denver over there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Nix is interesting because, like, prospect wise coming out, I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of people were down on him. I was down on him as a prospect coming
people
in.
were, yeah.
And then last year, he gets attached to Sean Payton. He comes out and he has this really solid fantasy season. He can run. He looks a little more competent than at least I expected. Gives you those top 10 numbers. But I wasn't like projecting that he was going to build from that, right? Like I wasn't projecting that all of a sudden we were going to see this new ceiling for him. I had him ranked kind of right where he finished last year, as like that mid to low end QB1. And I thought he was going to be kind of the same player, maybe slightly better, but I wasn't projecting him to have like that much more this year. Now, was this a down game? Like, absolutely it was. But you look at, I mean, if you're worried, right, this week he tossed 176 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. He had a fumble as well. Last year, he didn't throw a touchdown until week 4. His stat lines were 138 passing yards and 2 picks in week 1, 246 and 2 picks in week 2, 216, no touchdowns, no picks in week 3. I know he was running a little bit in those games, but you weren't feeling particularly great about Bo Nix at that point. And yet he turns it around and puts up top 10 stats for fantasy on the season on a per game basis. I think it's going to be probably just fine for him. And it's really not that I have this insane belief in Bo Nix. It's more that I have this belief in Sean Payton that they're going to get this right. He'll figure out whatever mistakes they made. They have enough talent around him. I think Nix will be fine where you took him, but he's not somebody that's going to win you your fantasy league. And that's why you and I didn't end up with that much of him based on where he was going in drafts.
Yeah, I think the thing that would perturb me if I was a Nix bro is the 18 rushing yards, right? Because this was my fear, was that now that they have 2 running backs that they can actually play, we saw a lot of not a lot, but a little more than you probably want of like Tyler Bidet. But J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, 11.7 yards per carry for old R.J. Harvey because of that 50-yard run. J.K. Dobbins just 16 for 63 and a touch. Like, they've got a real run game now. They don't need Bo Nix to be like the engine of the run game like he was last year. So I think from a fantasy standpoint, he's going to take a step back there. And then in the passing game, this was still kind of what it was last year. Cortland Sutton and a bunch of dudes in his orbit. So I just don't know that we saw a lot of like progression in the passing game. It's just 1 week. Like maybe Troy Franklin emerges. Marvin Mims. He's Marvin Mims. I'm still skeptical that he's like a real wide receiver. So, we'll just have to see with some of this stuff. But we didn't see any progression in the pass game, and we saw the run game actually be real. I think both of those are bad news for Bo Nix as a fantasy quarterback, even if it can be good news for the Denver Broncos offense. But let's get to the big one here, Boone. This one's got to be a tough conversation. Mark S. sends in this email on Kenneth Walker. Love the pod, guys, but I clearly didn't listen to you on this one. Why did I put myself in this situation? I knew Zach Charbonnet was a monster, and still, here I am. Please tell me I'm overreacting and Kenneth Walker is going to be great. It's just a foot injury leading to a slow start. I don't know if you can, though. Damn it. All the best. Leather Rut, I guess. Okay, so Kenneth Walker. Not great. I will say of the people he's saying like didn't listen to, you didn't listen to Scott Pianowski because this was totally Scott's like call that it was going to be Charbonnet over Kenneth Walker. I was kind of a centrist, but very pro. I wanted to take both of these guys, like take your shots, but I was still comfortable taking Kenneth Walker in the 4th round. The Kenneth Walker teams aren't looking so good right now, Justin Boone. So where are we on the Kenneth Walker panic meter?
I don't normally overreact, but I'm going to say that we're in the total panic zone on this one. I am very, very concerned. I mean, I was touting Walker all summer. We've seen him post really, really strong per game stats in the past, even last year, RB12 in fantasy points per game last season. And yeah, I mean, it was touched on there, right? Like there was this foot injury that kept him out. And if we look at that a little bit closer, the foot injury kept him out. They had that preseason game where all the running backs looked great. And right around that time, we had Mike McDonald come out and really challenge Walker in the media. He said, like, he's got to get back out here. He's got to string some practices together if he wants to be that guy. And Walker immediately shows up at practice that week and practices all week. And all of a sudden he's back, right? Did he rush back? Is that a concern? Did he come back because he was worried? And now it's kind of showing up that he's not totally 100%. Like, I think anything is on the table here. And it's also on the table because we have the quotes from McDonald today, right? Like he said, this could go any way. They could get more touches they didn't really give a clear directive on who was going to be the lead back, just that both these guys could get more work here. So I am concerned. And maybe it was the cowardly approach, but remember, I was saying you could draft both these players. And on a lot of teams, that's what I did because I felt so strongly about this rushing attack from what we saw in the summer that I thought at least one of them could come through. I think worst case scenario would be it just turns into like this hot hand thing where both of them get involved. But if you look at just this game, is it just me or did Zach Charbonnet look like the better running back? Did Zach Charbonnet look like the one that kind of fits this system better? He did. He really did. And that's me taking maybe an early season L here. I hope that Walker gets healthier and we see this kind of go back to Walker as the lead guy. And Charbonnet at this point, I think, is going to be more involved. But maybe it can turn more into that 60-40 kind of situation with Walker in the lead. But right now, I am definitely worried. And on the teams where I didn't get Charbonnet and Walker together, it's a very, very big concern.
Better success rate on zone runs and gap runs was Zach Charbonnet last week, according to Fantasy Points data, especially on those zone runs where they actually used him on more zone concept runs. 8 for 30 and a touchdown. Obviously, the touchdown's doing a lot of work there in terms of the success of those plays for Zach Charbonnet. But yeah, like I said on the recap show, played in the 2-minute drill. Otherwise, it's pretty much an even split in terms of the opportunities, which is kind of the worst case scenario, especially because the run game didn't look that great, right? Like I still don't know quite how good the 49ers defense is with Robert Saleh back there and some younger players along with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner in the front seven. We'll kind of see. Like that's another, like I need another week in terms of this run game not going to be up to expectations? But the reality is, if the run game isn't up to expectations and this is like a 50-50 down the middle split, that's the worst case scenario for both of these guys in terms of the fantasy football outlook, because then it's like you need one to miss time in order for them to be like a true set it and forget it running back one. Otherwise, we're just kind of looking at two like flex dudes.
And I wonder if it's going to take a couple weeks before we even get a better indication of how this is going to turn out, because it's the Steelers next week. It's not necessarily a great matchup there. And will we have to see maybe a few weeks go by for Walker to get further removed from the injury before we can rule out the injury potentially being the cause for this? Yeah, I'm not feeling great about the Walker calls so far.
Nope. I think of all the ones we've talked about here, other than the Dolphins, this is the one that's like most on my coping corner radar. It feels a little bit. I think the first year that we did this show, Boone, that was the year that Tony Pollard was drafted super high in fantasy, and he like couldn't score along the goal line. I think we eventually like renamed the coping corner Pollard's Playground, because he was just every week it was. How do I panic about Tony Pollard? Do I panic about Tony Pollard? Do I panic? It's like, no, he's in the coping corner, brother. This is on my radar a little bit, but I hope I'm wrong, because I just hope this run game is a little bit better going forward. So with that, we're going to let Boone take a moment there to wipe away his tears, and we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we'll get to your social submissions to the People's Panic Meter right after this. All right, we are back. We're continuing to roll through the People's Panic Meter. Let's get to our social media submissions. If you don't like writing emails and you don't want to hit up Fantasy Mailbag at yahoosports.com, every Sunday night after the SNF game goes to zeros, I always tweet out the call out for the People's Panic Meter. So if you just want to complain on social media, which everybody wants to do that, you can always just look up for that tweet after Sunday Night Football. So let's get into it. Splint has our first one here. Tweets this about the Detroit Lions. The Lions got me feeling a little scared right now. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. I'd be feeling a little scared about those Detroit Lions after what we saw. That was a beatdown, bro. I mean, Boone, as that game was going on, I thought to myself, like, thank God, at least you and I at least wanted to have the let's just have the conversation about what if the Lions take a step back without Ben Johnson in what was your very first episode, I believe, on the show. So how are we feeling about the Detroit Lions? What is our panic meter level on them?
I mean, I think it's concerning, but I think we saw this coming, right? Like, to me, we'll put it at some panic just based on how much talent they have on that offense, right? Like, things can get sorted out very quickly, especially once they get back in a dome environment. We know Jared Goff splits on the road, outdoors versus indoors, right? When he's home, when he's in that dome, he can still produce. And I imagine that's going to be the case. But I brought this up, like we talked about this in the summer, right? That the schedule was going to be much harder for them this year. They went from one end to the other in terms of easy schedule, hard schedule. And there were more outdoor games. 2 of their first 3 this year are outdoors. Last year, they didn't have an outdoor game until week 9. This year, things are changing. And that's on top of the Ben Johnson of it all, their play caller leaving, the offensive line changing, and the interior of that offensive line. The offensive line, which was a strength for a very long time for them, maybe no longer a strength there based on what that game looked like. The Packers defense got better. I mean, yes, it's very concerning, but I think things could get right very quickly once they go back inside.
Oof, this stat we've got on the screen right now from Sanjeet. Jared Goff has had 5 different play callers in his career under the 3, not named Sean McVay and Ben Johnson. He is 0-19-1. I'm sure that's going to change here in short order, but I will say this, Boone. I said this on the recap show to Chris Allen, and I'm a man of my word. I would never lie to the people of this show. I said that I could not wait to chart the Jets and Garrett Wilson. Like, just watching that game live, I was like, oh man, those formations are looking pretty good. And I had a thought and I'm a man of my words. The first film I pulled up this morning, okay, charted the Garrett Wilson stuff. Pretty excited about the way that offense looks. I had a thought while watching that one. Why did the Lions not just promote Tanner Engstrand, like their passing game coordinator? Why didn't they just promote him to offensive coordinator? Why did they just let him walk out the building to New York, which is probably a week 1 overreaction. Maybe John Morton's going to be just fine. But these are the conversations we're having coming out of week 1. And I'm with you. I think there has to be some panic to this right now.
Yeah. And we talked about that on one of the shows, right? That it wasn't just losing the coordinators. It was losing the assistant coaches too, that went with those guys to their other destinations. Like, it was a lot of work probably to rebuild that coaching staff. And now we're going to see how that works out. And I do give Dan Campbell a lot of credit because he built that coaching staff initially and people got on him for hiring former players and all that sort of stuff. And yet he picked some guys that really came through. Hopefully he does it again. So we're not going to totally write off the Lions after 1 week. It's just too good of an offense. But I think we saw this coming, that the ceiling for them was going to be a little bit lower this year. And that materialized in week 1 in a big way.
Next one up comes from L. Ritchie, I believe. Tweeted this about his wide receivers. All my Nico Collins and Drake London builds. That's what he is panicking about. I'll tell you what. Drake London, 15 targets in week 1. Close to a massive game with a couple of touchdowns there. I've got no panic on Drake London. We said we had no panic on Nico Collins. As long as Drake London's shoulder is fine, I have no panic on Drake London.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's the thing. We're just going to watch to see what kind of updates we're going to get on this injury. And as long as he's healthy and he's out there, then yeah, Drake London's going to be in your lineup every single week. And Drake London is going to have a great season, just as we predicted.
Next one to get to, that was easy. At Pixelated Steel said Drake Maye, the quote upgraded, you know they mean it when they put the upgraded in quotes, wide receiver core looks as bad as last year. I don't know. I thought actually the receivers had some moments in this one. Kayshon Boutte is like the reception perception Discord is like freaking out about, we need the Quinshon Booty route charts right now. It's on the list. I'm going to get to it here in week 1. He had 100 yards. I think Steph Diggs had a couple of nice moments. But, yeah, still a pretty brutal performance overall offensively for New England. Where's your level of panic right now if you were relying on Drake Maye to be like a sleeper QB1?
I think some panic, but I think we have to give some context to it because it's a young quarterback. It's a new system, right? He's got to get used to new coaches. So we've seen that with other quarterbacks, the other young guys, where it takes a little bit of time, right? Like it might not happen right away where everything's firing on all cylinders. So let's see what he looks like in, a few weeks here, if it still kind of looks rough for him. But this wasn't a terrible performance fantasy-wise either, right? Like one of the big things for him last season was that he had this very high floor with the rushing ability. He was able to come through for you. In the 9 outings where he played at least 85% of the snaps as a rookie, he never finished lower than QB 17. This week, with just Monday Night Football left to be played, where is he? QB 16 right now. So that's not the kind of performance that's going to lose you your fantasy week. But the question this year was, could he break out? Could he show that he has a really high ceiling to go with that high floor? And I think after this game, you got to be a little bit concerned that it was like more of the same. And will he actually be able to unlock something else there? So yeah, that's where we're going to put it at. Some panic in my mind, but I'm not totally freaking out about this one. But we might need to reassess these Patriots. Like, are they really the team that's going to compete for the playoffs? Are they really the team that's going to make a huge leap this season? I'm not so sure about that after what we saw in week 1.
Yeah, I still thought their over-under was crazy at like 8.5. Football 301, I said I'd go under that win total when we did our AFC East preview. They play the Dolphins this week. The Dolphins, for as bad as they are on offense, they're even worse in the secondary. So, Danny Dimes just ripped them up for like 270 yards or whatever, literally scored on every single drive. So maybe after that week, if we don't get something good out of the Patriots here in week 2, then I think we can have the Drake Maye conversation. But for right now, I do think he is a guy that I have some panic on. And if you were relying on him as a standalone QB1, he might be more of like a matchup-based play. But this is a pretty good matchup here this week, so it might be a good time to risk it. I want to talk about this one here. Next one up, at Old Man Metastic. I don't know. David Njoku losing work to Harold Fannin Jr. is concerning. I know you are going to talk about Harold Fannin later, a spoiler alert in the waiver wire segment, but save the Fannin stuff. What does the breakout potentially of this young rookie do for a guy in David Njoku that I couldn't believe? Just frankly, my perspective, I couldn't believe how high people were drafting Njoku. Did not go well in week 1 for the Browns' nominal starting tight end.
Well, over the last couple of seasons, Njoku averaged over 10 fantasy points per game in half PPR both years, right? Like he was a very consistent producer. He was able to find the end zone, and you looked at it and you said, okay, we get more stable quarterback play hopefully this year with Joe Flacco out there early in the season at least. And could Njoku continue to get it done in that way for you in that area of tight ends where it starts to get a little murky, like we talked about earlier with Mark Andrews, where everybody kind of has some red flags there. When I look at Fannin and Njoku, though, I'm not even comparing them like tight end to tight end. I'm comparing them like pass catchers in the offense because I don't know that Fannin is like a threat to take Njoku's job. Like Njoku still had his routes, still had his snaps. I don't think that's the concern here. I think the concern is how many pass catchers can this offense support?
Right.
And when you're looking at Jerry Jeudy getting his, when you're looking at Cedric Tillman, who looked pretty good this week, and now Fannin coming on as this like chess piece, like he was in college, and then moving him around the formation and them targeting him this much. Now that becomes the concern for David Njoku. So I definitely will say this one for me, I will say total panic because I think this bumps Njoku down into like the low end tight end 1 range, maybe even like borderline tight end 1 for fantasy. And I'll tell you what, like Fannin is moving up into a range that's like very close to that. I don't think this was an aberration. I think this is the way they plan to use them. That's what they told us before the season. And then they come out in week 1 and they did it and it worked for the most part. Now the matchup was very good, so we'll have to factor that in too, but still, I think they want to use Fannin as that piece that can move around the formation. And I think he's going to be successful in that role, just like he was when he was in college.
Yeah, like this Browns offense is just not going to support all these guys. And because that's all your analysis, and I know we're going to talk about Fannin later, is so true. Like they obviously have a plan for him. He was so good in college, and he was on the field 64.6% of the routes. He was the 4th most routes on the team. Like this is going to be a 12 personnel team. We're not going to see like Jamari Thrash and Isaiah Bond and these guys. Like, it's going to be 12 personnel. Fannin's going to move around. And Njoku's going to be the inline guy. And yeah, I mean, Cedric Tillman, I'm so glad people are starting to talk about this now. Like, I saw Adam Pfeiffer and JJ Zachariason talking about this on Twitter this morning. Judy has been outscored by Cedric Tillman in 4 of the 5 games that they played together since Amari Cooper was traded. And I thought it was interesting noting that Tillman was actually like the move around guy. It was Jerry Jeudy kind of stuck at X receiver, which I don't know if I love that for Jerry Jeudy going forward, but Tillman moving around was interesting. He had a really good game if you just overlooked that like drop that he caused an interception. But Jeudy did the same thing. So again, these guys are like kind of equal right now in the Browns' eyes. So yeah, David Njoku, I'm with you. If I drafted him, which I didn't, total panic on him as a tight end 1. Next one to get to, Junie Junebug says, I'm panicking a little bit on the Jaguars receivers. Is Trevor Lawrence actually just bad? I expected everyone to feast on the Panthers defense, but they made it look much harder than expected. Should I be worried about consistency from BTJ and Travis Hunter? On the Trevor Lawrence point, we actually have some audio here from Coach Speak Index on Twitter from a Liam Cohen press conference. We're going to get to that here in just a second, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, not a great game from Trevor Lawrence. BTJ 7 targets, 1 reception. If we have the audio, let's hear it because this was pretty funny to hear.
I think we tried to get him a touch on the first or second drive of the game, first play of the game, right? We don't convert it, throw him a screen low, doesn't come down with it, and then the flow of the game, we missed him on a in breaker, which he had a lot of room to run. Missed him on a corner route where he was fairly open. And then missed, had the one on the out of bounds. So you're talking about that's 5 catches right there that gets him into the flow of it.
I love Liam Cohen just breaking down like, yeah, my quarterback just missing my number 1 receiver left and right. Like
Harmon. He said we missed him. We missed him. Like, I think I'm guilty of that sometimes, right? If I notice someone doing something wrong, like, hey, we should do this differently, right? But it's not necessarily we. It is definitely directed at one person. And man, that's what it seems like there with Lawrence. And yeah, you got to be a little bit concerned about that. I don't know that they have anybody else that they're going to. They're basically going to sink or swim with Lawrence there. But man, he definitely threw him under the bus, it seemed like, in that quote.
He's the backup, still Nick Mullins on this team. He was the backup in preseason. So, yes. All right, let me tell you what. They're not going to Nick Mullins, okay? That's not going to happen.
Former Vikings star Nick Mullins, you mean? I keep bringing up Nick Mullins when we talk about JJ McCarthy because he had some good fantasy performances there. But yeah, he's not saving the day in Jacksonville.
Nick Mullins did have some pretty sweet yards per attempt stats that we may or may not have read off many times in the history of this podcast when he was with the San Francisco 49ers. Shout out to those days. But yeah, no, I don't think we're going to see Nick Mullins. And I'm going to say no panic on this. And maybe I end up looking like an idiot and Trevor Lawrence just doesn't get saved by Liam Cohen. But I'm pretty close to no panic on the Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr. stuff. Where are you with this?
I'm with you. And there is one very specific reason that I'm with you. Because even though we thought the Panthers matchup was going to be good and they didn't come through, who do they play next week, Harmon? They play the Bengals next week, and I think they are going to be just fine in that matchup. I think we're going to see them bounce back in a big way, and we're going to forget about all these things, and we're going to remember, okay, it's going to be maybe a little choppy with new coaches and trying to get, new pieces into that offense with Hunter there and everything. But yeah, I'm not worried about this one. I think it's going to be just fine in week 2 when they go up against Cincinnati.
We love to see it. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers yet. I can do it right now as we stall here, but it felt like Trevor Lawrence was playing a little bit better, like before the rain delay, right? Like before the whole weather situation, it felt like the offense was a little bit more insane. Yeah. So, I mean, 14 of 19. Prior to that, 73.7% completion rate for Trevor Lawrence in the first and second quarter. So it felt like that game just got a little weird in the third quarter and beyond. So I'm not too worried. I think we give it a week on the Trevor Lawrence stuff. I'm glad I pulled that up on the fly. All right, this next one is funny just because I don't know. I don't think I can swear on these live shows, so I'm not going to, but at Sports Safe Space. I love it. I love that their handle is Sports Safe Space, and then immediately the first word is effing Kaleb Johnson. It made no sense for all caps, by the way. It made no sense for this man to be returning kicks. Kenneth Gainwell played over him today, laughing emoji, and then under I'm legit. I guess can I not say that? I'm legit something that starts with a P and ends with a D. All right, there we go. All right, so anyways, Sports Safe Space is upset about Kaleb Johnson, if you couldn't tell. Honestly, if Kaleb Johnson wasn't a rookie running back and like those guys can just be better in the second half of the season, I'd just be sending him straight to the coping corner, but I guess we can just say total panic.
Yeah, I think this one has to be total panic. I love like the passion and the anger there. I hope it's like partially in jest, but it's fun to see people get that fired up about this. My guess is that Aaron Rodgers going into week 1, going against his old team that he so desperately needed to beat, he just felt way more comfortable with the veterans out there protecting him. And that ties into what we heard in August, right? In training camp, that Kaleb Johnson was struggling a bit in pass pro.
Yeah.
And we wondered, is that going to slow him down a little bit early in the season? And that's what we started to kind of change the projections towards, that it was going to be more of a slow ramp up for him. And that's where we're at. I thought it was going to be mostly Jaylen Warren out there. I didn't think it was going to be as much Kenneth Gainwell as we saw. But yeah, it's going to take a little longer before we see Kaleb Johnson out there taking on more of that, former Najee Harris kind of role in the offense. So yes, if you're in like a shallow league, if you're in like a short bench league, you could even at this point consider dropping Kaleb Johnson. I think I don't really want to do that in a regular league. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to hold him to see what this looks like in the weeks to come. But that's kind of where we're at with it, where this is an Arthur Smith offense. They're going to use so many different pieces. And if they're starting off with Kaleb Johnson kind of this far behind, how long is it going to take before he's actually in a bigger role? And what's that role going to look like? Is it just going to be kind of a 50-50 split with Warren, or a 45-45-10 split or something, right? So it could be a frustrating thing to have him on your fantasy team for a while here.
Yeah, it's crazy that the Steelers were so much better on offense in week 1. I didn't draft any Steelers. I said this a lot. It just was not a team I invested in, but they did definitely outperform my expectations in week 1. And, it was the second most highest drafted player that that comes out looking the worst in this whole situation. So yeah, definitely a guy that might be in the coping corner after a couple more weeks of this usage, but I guess be a little early to do it in week 1. All right, next one. I've got to take on the sad feelings on this one. Zach says, Josh Downs, panicking about Josh Downs. Daniel Jones is not going to pass for 270 plus every week. We'll see, Zach. Come on. The Josh Downs only got 3 targets. Pittman and Warren seem to be the first 2 options, and Jonathan Taylor was even getting targets out of the backfield. Boone, I'm gonna actually have you try to talk me down on this one, because I'm like kind of total panic on Josh Downs, and maybe that's extreme, but and because he only ran around on 51.5% of the dropbacks. Now, we know he's not like a 2-receiver set player. Alec Pierce is still going to be on the field. Alec Pierce was second on the team in routes behind only Michael Pittman, who ran 29 routes, 87.9% of the dropbacks. So we know he's not going to be a full-time player. There's always that. Maybe he's still coming back from a hamstring injury, just like A.J. Brown. Maybe they're just not ready to overload him yet. So maybe we do see more Josh Downs going forward. But there's a reason I didn't want to be crazy ahead of consensus on Josh Downs. I love Josh Downs. I am like the biggest Josh Downs guy, but I didn't want to be crazy ahead of consensus on him in fantasy this year, because part of the thesis that didn't make sense to me is Michael Pittman's not dust. Michael Pittman is a good football player. Michael Pittman had an awesome 3-year run from 2021 to 2023 in reception perception. He goes out there, gets 3 of the 4 RPO targets in week 1. He has a 27.6% target share overall. We all kind of acknowledged that, Tyler Warren was going to get a big piece of the pie, but man, Michael Pittman is still going to be a big part of this passing game. It's just going to be tough unless Josh Downs can get to 75% of the routes, which maybe he will going forward. We saw a lot more Mo Alley Cox in this game than I probably expected, a lot more Alec Ogletree than I expected in this game. So maybe they just play more 3-receiver sets. Danny Dimes looking good. That's got to be kind of good news for Josh Downs, maybe, although it might just be a week 1 fluke against a terrible Dolphins team. But yeah, I'm pretty concerned about what we saw from the Josh Downs stuff in week 1, mostly because, yeah, like Michael Pittman's a good football player. There's no reason for them to just push him to the side.
I want to talk you down, but I can't. I think you have it in the exact right spot here. The Wan'Dale Robinson PPR scam is not coming for Downs this year. Talent-wise, I still believe in him too. And I'm right there with you that I also talked him up. I didn't have him ranked like particularly high. I think I had him ranked in the 40s because that's just kind of ADP-wise where you could still get him. But yeah, there are too many hands in this offense looking for the ball. And you nailed it, that if he's going to be that slot guy, he's going to be in 3 receiver sets. Even guys like A.D. Mitchell are still involved in this offense, right? So it's not even just the top guys. There are so many guys that are involved. It's not going to happen for Downs this year. I'm right there with you.
5 routes, 2 targets for A.D. Mitchell. Like, yeah, when he's on the field, they get him the football. Same with Josh Downs usually. And like I said, I want to give this another week or 2, for him to get healthy, but this is always part of the Josh Downs stuff. So, look, still a great talent, still a really good NFL receiver. I think a guy that has a lot more to give, but really concerned based on what we saw in week 1 for him. All right, 2 more really quick ones here. At NFL FPL sends in Brock Bowers because of the cost of replacement and Isiah Pacheco due to Kareem Hunt. Isiah Pacheco is pretty close to coping corner. Maybe we can revisit that after week 2, but I didn't draft any Isiah Pacheco, but if I did, I'd be pretty nervous about that. Brock Bowers, level of concern on what you saw to Brock Bowers in week 1 with the knee injury, rotating snaps with Michael Mayer, the preseason usage boon, it's back.
Not worried about the usage at all. We saw him still put up good numbers. It's the injury. We just got to make sure that knee is okay and that he's still going to be out there. If he is, Bowers is going to be just fine. So no concern there. For Pacheco, you nailed it. I am concerned. It looked like, and shout out Nathan Yonke of Pro Football Focus and the snaps count data that he puts out every year in the preseason, the regular season. It's so valuable. And he pointed out that for Pacheco, he was right back around that 50% mark where he was last season after he came back from the injury. I think we were hoping it was going to be more up in like the 60+ range where he was before the injury last year and the year prior to that. It wasn't. They're getting these other guys involved. So yeah, Pacheco, there'll be better days, but also with the injuries to the receiving core, are they going to be dominating games? Are there going to be as many scoring opportunities? No. I'm not so sure about that in the short term. So maybe later in the season when Rashee Rice is back, Pacheco will be better. But right now, yeah, I think it's certainly a big concern.
I can't believe the state of the Chiefs receiver core is like Hollywood Brown getting 16 targets and then like Juju and Tyquan Thornton. Like that is so unseeable. I know they obviously have injuries. Jalen Royals injured, Rashee Rice suspended, Xavier Worthy taking that big hit from Travis Kelce. Like I know it's just crazy. Like that is embarrassing as a top 3 receiver set in 2025. Unserious stuff. Okay, last one here to get to. Thomas sends in this tweet. The Bengals, the entire offense looks terrible. It would be a much bigger story today if they lost. I'm sorry, Thomas. Is this your first season watching football? First time? What's that meme from the Ballad of Buster Scruggs? Where's the guy about to get hung? Like first time? That's literally this here. Okay, I got no damn panic, no damn panic on the Bengals. This is what they happen. This is what they do in September.
I might be a little more panicked if I was Zach Taylor because they just cannot start quick at all. What's the stat? They're 1-11, I think, in their first 2 games under Zach Taylor, first 2 games every season. Like, it is just brutal. I don't know why this happens. I don't know what they need to do, but they need to change something very quickly there because they're getting off to these slow starts. Though I will say, I like Joe Burrow putting like the positive spin of like, hey, we don't normally win games like this, and we actually won this one. So, like, all right, that's at least a little bit of a positive. But, yeah, I'm not panicked. This team's going to be just fine offense-wise.
Progress. Nice little progress for the Bengals to actually win that game. All right, we are going to take a quick break here, our last break of the show. When we come back, Justin Boone gives out his waiver wire picks for the week right after this. All right, it is time to get to Justin Boone's waiver wire pickups. For the people out there, for the people listening, watching, whatever, Boone writes these up. I don't know if you guys know this, but there are things called words that you read on the internet. So let's try. Boone, the goal of this season is to get people reading. So we want people to actually go to the column and read your in-depth thoughts on just an absolute ton of players. But for the show, at each position, Boone is going to give us a must-add at each position, and then one deep sleeper that your league may be sleeping on. Let's start at the quarterback position. Who are your pickups this week?
So if you're looking for just a streamer type, there's guys like Matthew Stafford. There's guys like Aaron Rodgers. There's always going to be guys like that you can pick up. But we don't necessarily need those guys right now. We're not dealing with bye weeks or anything. So I'm looking at players that I think could potentially become difference makers at some point down the road. And we have to look at Daniel Jones for that, right? I don't know that any of us expected to have Daniel Jones come out and just destroy in week one the way that he did. But he looked really good in that offense. We've seen him put up decent fantasy stats before, right? Like if you look to 2022, he was the QB 11 in fantasy points per game that year. With this offense in Indy, with the weapons they have there, with his rushing ability, I think he's somebody that could potentially get back up into that range. You just have to be very careful because this week he's the one that has to go against the Broncos. So you're not necessarily going to want to play him in week 2, but down the road, I think he's someone that could be up in that low end QB1 range.
And who is your second kind of like deep sleeper here?
This one's a little bit further down. We're looking ahead a little bit more, but Jaxson Dart on the Giants. We saw right away, Russell Wilson, he is not going to be under center for long in New York. It did not look good. Brian Daboll after the game didn't even want to commit to him as the starter. He came out today and said, okay, we intend to start Russell Wilson this week. I assume that's the way they'll go, but I think we're going to see Jaxson Dart out there a lot sooner than people expected. That's why I was taking him as my QB3 in best ball drafts, because I figured very early in the season they were going to turn to him. And what we saw from him in the preseason was decent, right? 68% of the passes he was completing out there. He threw for 372 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He was out there running. He ran the ball 6 times for 52 yards and a score. And we know how valuable that rushing production can be. So if he gets out there, he's also somebody that people are going to be able to consider putting right into their lineup. If he's going to run like that, they have enough weapons around him in New York. I think he could be interesting for fantasy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I just think they want to wait until Andrew Thomas is back there, because we got yet another piece of evidence that when Andrew Thomas is not out there, left tackle for the Giants, that offensive line is not functional. Speaking of not functional, the Browns are not a good offense. And yet, because this, to me, Boone, seems like a pretty gross week at the waiver wire running back spot, you've got 2 Browns here at this position.
And I normally won't put guys in the article that are over 50% rostered because that just seems unfair. But this is one circumstance where I did. Quinshon Judkins, such a strange situation, right? He ends up signing a contract on the eve of the season. Now there's talk he's on an exempt list right now where they kind of get an ability to just put him off to the side for a couple weeks. But Adam Schefter was reporting that it looks like they're intending to get him out there for week 2. He's going to meet with the league this week to talk about that case that he had and what they're going to do about it. So we don't know. There could be a potential suspension at some point, but he is the player that they drafted to be the lead back in that backfield in Cleveland. And if he's out there in week 2, if he's out there soon, I don't think it's going to take long for him to get to the top of the depth chart. Now, in week 1, we expected there to be a committee there between Dylan Sampson, the other rookie that they took, and Jerome Ford. It was mostly Sampson out there this week. He was catching a ton of passes, and I think that projects pretty easily moving forward. If Judkins is out there, it's going to be Judkins on early downs as the lead guy, and Sampson getting the pass volume and producing that way. So we could see Judkins be a QB3 with RB3 with RB2 upside, and then we could see Sampson, because of the pass catching ability, get into that RB3 flex range. So I think both these guys should be rostered everywhere. And right now they're both kind of around the 50% rostered mark.
Let's get to wide receiver here, where you have 2 picks, both from that Friday Night Football banger that we got.
Yeah, and Hollywood Brown isn't somebody that I'm normally recommending picking up, but as we talked about earlier, because of all the injuries in that receiving core, he's just the last man standing here. We have Rashee Rice out for 6 games with the suspension. We have Xavier Worthy. We don't really know when he's going to come back from this shoulder injury. We have Travis Kelce clearly in decline. Even with all those other guys out, Kelce didn't do that much in that Friday night game. So now you just have to have Brown step up. And in that game, we saw 16 targets for him, 99 yards in that game, 10 receptions. He basically has to be Patrick Mahomes' number one target here. And so for this next little while with those guys out, he can give you wide receiver 3, maybe up to wide receiver 2 value in your lineup. I think you have to go out and pick him up. The other guys in that receiving corps, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton. Hopefully Jalen Royals comes back and we can see Jalen Royals actually do something, because I think they were hoping that he'd be able to step into that Rice role. But right now, Hollywood Brown is the guy to roster there and is somebody that I think you could just slot right into your lineup as a volume play.
Your next guy you got here, Quentin Johnston. I know people love to hate on QJ, man, but like, he's a functional NFL receiver. He's volatile. He's mistake prone. There's going to be a lot of variance, but when you can get him rumbling after the catch, we saw this, Boone, like he can make some plays.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers kind of picked up where they left off last year, right? They were throwing the ball like crazy, and he was big time involved, catching a couple touchdowns. I think he's holding off the rookies there for now. It looks like he is going to be able to produce. So I'm excited to go pick him up right now, and I think he's somebody that can slot right into your lineup as like a volatile wide receiver 3 flex option, but still somebody that can produce.
All right, tight end. We somehow have another freaking Cleveland Brown. We talked a lot about Harold Fannin Jr. earlier, but why do you think he's worth picking up?
I mean, based on what he did in college, they moved him around the formation. He put up huge stats, 117 catches, over 1,500 yards his final season. And Cleveland said they were going to use him exactly the same way. And in week 1, they did. So much volume for him. I think he's going to it's not hard to get up into that low end tight end 1 conversation. He is going to be very close to it. That's where I'm going to have him ranked moving forward. I think he needs to be rostered everywhere.
And you've got one deep sleeper for the road here back at the wide receiver position, Boone. Hit the people with it.
The Titans, Elic Ayomanor, right? The rookie who was going to step up as the number 2 option in that offense. He did this week, right? He came out. He had just 1 fewer target than Calvin Ridley in a very tough matchup against the Broncos. I think now he is the favorite to potentially be that guy, and it didn't turn into a lot of production. People aren't going to realize it was 2 catches for 13 yards. There could have been a lot more. There was a play that should have been reversed, but they didn't challenge. He is going to have some big games moving forward. I think he's somebody that you can go out, pick up sneaky right now, and is going to potentially get into your starting lineup eventually.
82% of the routes right there, the same as Chico Conquo behind Calvin Ridley. So that's a great call out from Justin Boone. Grab him before he goes off and your league mates are aware of it. All right, Boone, appreciate it, man. Today was a great show. Excellent ride for your first run on the People's Panic Meter. That is going to do it for today's show. On Tuesday, Ray Garvin joins me for another edition of the Data Dump as we share 10 stats that you need to know heading into week 2. That is going to be live at 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, so be sure to like and subscribe. Until then, we are out.